This is John Pierce with Beyond 20. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover the Cherwell Web Forms feature. Now, Web Forms is not a well-known feature within Cherwell, as it's not installed by default during the installation. To check and see if it is installed, open File Explorer on whichever server that you have the Cherwell application installed on. Navigate to your C drive, open up Program Files, and then Cherwell Browser Applications. Within this folder, there should be a folder called Cherwell Web Forms. If that folder exists, more than likely you do have the feature installed. If it is not, go ahead and launch the installation executable, and you're going to be running through the Portal and Browser Apps option. But prior to doing that, I would suggest that you record any specific customizations that you have. Namely, if you have a customized web link from the out-of-the-box installation, take down that information with an IIS, and or if you have certain credentials that are used for the logon user within the services for any of the feature sets that are installed. As after you go through this option, it uninstalls everything and then reinstalls it in order for you to check the box for web forms to be installed. So once the installation is complete, you will have to re-enter all of that information and redo your customizations. But if you go to any Google search or any search that you feel more comfortable with, just type in Cherwell Web Forms, and there should be a link that says About Web Forms Cherwell Support. This link will bring you to the help file. Though it says 4.0, it still works in 5.11a, and I did verify that it was part of the latest version, which is version 7. But through here, you can step through each one of the options. I'll be covering a little bit of this throughout this video, but it indicates how to update the logon account within the CSS file, and I'll show you how to do that. If you open up the Cherwell Web Forms folder, you will see this web.config file. And if you go ahead and open that to edit it, it is mainly this information that you'll be concerned with. You'll need the logon name, which is currently, for this tutorial, I have the CSD admin. Enter the password as well. And depending on the business object that you're going to be utilizing with web forms, you're going to enter that business object name here. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, I created a new business object that's titled IT Survey. I'm just going to edit the object, and you'll see here that I've already created a lot of the logical fields and other text fields for comments, so on and so forth. I've also already created a link back to incident, and I've created the form view of how I would like the results of the survey to appear in the Blue client, for example, for the IT leadership to review once the survey has been completed. Web forms do not support embedded forms, but there is one way around that. So I suggest creating the layout of how you want it to appear in the Blue client. Come over to your portal default and then create your portal view. And then once you start editing that form, you can overlay everything on top of each other and limit each part or each form as you want it to step through based upon visibility. So I created a status field that ties back to the visibility depending on the current status of the information in that field. And I'll show you how that works once I create a survey. Now I'm going to log into the Blue client, and I've already created a service request. It's currently in the status of closed. And I'm going to walk through one step that I've already created in order to create the survey. I'm just going to run that. And for this survey process, I've actually created 3 different surveys because I wanted to capture metrics based upon the mood of the client. So if they felt happy, they can click the happy link, neutral or unhappy. I'm just going to close out of this. And if I clicked on the neutral feeling, it'll bring me to part 1. And in the portal view, I actually have visibility options based upon, if this was embedded form number 1, let's say, or part 1, I have visibility options based upon if this question is yes or no. If it's yes, it'll display the questions that I have for part 1, and if it's selected no, it will not display. And I'll show you how that was built. If I go back to the Orange client, it's easier to show you in the default view how I did this. So I'm going to select these set of questions, and I'll build out the visibility. If you come up to the flashlight that's on the toolbar, I'm going to build a custom expression. And I'm going to indicate that I only want this to appear if the current status is part 1. And because I'm also basing it based upon how this question is answered, I want to add an additional expression on that as well. And for this, I created this field to link it to part 1. So this field will also have to be a value of yes. Once I select OK, now that visibility is built out. And then you can build out part 2 and part 3. But in the portal view, I had to overlay everything on top of each other in order for it to appear like it is an embedded form. But I have to set those visibility options first. So in order to move this up, I just overlay it and just make sure everything else lines up with each other. Save it, test it, and this is how it will appear. So going back to the actual web form survey, I'm just going to select yes. I'm going to answer some random questions. And this button, I actually programmed it to update the current status to part 2. So once I select this, it's going to bring me to part 2. And then of course for part 3, it's bringing me to part 3. And I actually built out a last status to bring me to a thank you page. So those are some ways that you can play around with the visibility with web forms in order to have an anonymous, non-credentialed web form for your clients and or users to utilize. And especially surveys, it's very useful. One other thing that I do want to point out within the CSS file is that though I'm using the CSD admin logon name and logon password, I recommend that you create a separate user account that has limited security that only ties back to that major business object that you're utilizing the web form for. I hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, check us out at beyond20.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Beyond20 LLC.